Welcome to Mobile World Congress and RCR Wireless's RCR TV, where we're covering everything taking place here on the show floor. I'm Limor Schafman. It's my privilege to be here with Ulf Ewaldsson, the CTO of Ericsson. Ulf, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you have an amazing booth here, really exquisite and gorgeous. And it's really showing the trends of what is going on in network and carrier and infrastructure and also consumer levels of telecommunications today. So tell me, what are your impressions of Barcelona so far?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that Barcelona this year is a positive trend in terms of finding the new revenues, finding the opportunities for operators and carriers to find new business models, new ways of working with also the internet community and the internet players. And I'm very excited about that. The network starts to get very relevant for all new services that are being launched on top of them and integrated with them. We also see a span of different kinds of operators. Some are just choosing the model of connecting, but there are also others that are choosing more active roles in media, for instance, which is the fastest growing in wireless networks globally. More than 40% is just pure video now, and in growth. And on the tablet side, more than 50% of the usage of the tablets or the traffic of the tablets is video. And tablets then overtaking PCs, for instance, this year in terms of volumes. All of those trends are very important for us as builders, as developers of the technology, of the networks, and so forth. So that's a lot about what we're showing out here. Many of these services that are now coming are also in the cloud, of course. So I think one of the hottest topic here in Barcelona is how to connect into the clouds and make most of use of it, as well as how can we make network technology being based on cloud. And I think we're very happy to see that what was last year only discussions, if it was possible, is coming to reality, and we're able to show here on our show floor how we virtualized every application that we have in functions that we have in the networks being run in a cloud environment. So I think those are some of the strong trends. Then there can't be a wireless exhibition without talking about spectrum and all the issues regarding how can we better use the spectrum. There's a lot of technology advancements on that, the evolution of LTE, carrier aggregation, 450 megabit per second in downlink speeds by 3 different carriers aggregated and so forth, and the uplink comp features and so on. So there's a lot of talk about that, as well as then the small cells, where I think you're aware that Ericsson has launched some very exciting products already back in September last year. It was a big discussion topic also at CES around what we call the Ericsson Radio Dot system, where we are coming down to just very, very small implementations and making sure that we can still have an interference-free environment by coordinating with the rest of the frequencies. So that's a little bit on the radio side, a little bit on the core. Some of the reflections. We're just one day into the show. It's been a great first day for us. We had a record number of visitors to ourselves. But we will see how it goes.
You should say the number. It's rather astonishing.
Yeah, it's more than 4,000 visitors
in one day.
In our booth.
Oh my God. Which tells you about what's going on here and how many people are coming here to Mobile World Congress. I know it's the largest mobile conference in the world, maybe except barring what might be taking place in China or India. But I think it really is a reflection, at least what I'm seeing here, is a tremendous energy here and the deal making that's happening over here. I mean, people are really excited in terms of what's going on in telecom, because telecom now, it's no longer a telecommunications industry. It is fundamentally the strata that is really feeding all our industries going forward, especially if we're thinking more and more about machine-to-machine and Internet of Things. So what is Ericsson's take on that? I mean, given the kind of demands that are going to be put on the networks going forward, given the machine-to-machine era. What do you say? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the fantastic opportunity of our industry, and we carry a message very much around what we call the networked society, where everything that can benefit from a connection will have one. That's our vision, and we can see the whole transformation that's going on with industry after industry as they get digitalized. So I mean, music is very obvious, everyone knows that's digitalized, but now we're going through the digitalization of cars, and of course many of the US manufacturers, for instance, of cars have gone out and announced all kinds of connections and the connected car and so forth. And down here in Barcelona, we see a lot of interest on that. At CES, there was a lot of talk about.
Oh my God, it's an automotive show at this point.
It's becoming an automotive show. And it's because they're going through that. And as they want to get connected, that will put new requirements on the networks. So this industry is changing from being an inside out, where the innovation power was sitting from just different kinds of technologies in the networks, to understand what the future usage will be, what the future terminals will do. The whole consumer electronics connection into this is that all consumer electronics wants to be connected. And then you get into cars and industry after industry after industry. The impact of networks on that is going to be future networks where latencies, throughputs, energy consumption on devices, anything that you can imagine on those aspects will be put into the network to support those things from being better. A good example is also the connection for us, for instance, into the internet players. And we talked here in Barcelona about our open lab that we're working with, for instance, Facebook. I mean, more than 50% of their users are mobile-only users, where they need to make their sites and the experience, the consumer experience, superior, which is based then on the perfect signaling, perfect optimization of how those applications behave on top of the networks. And that's an easy example, but it's easier, you could say, than the entire car being connected, and maybe in the future even remote controlled by assisted remote control, I would say, from the network point of view, where I think 5G, for instance, is looking at those kinds of opportunities.
So let's take a step back and do a little point by point. Let's talk about spectrum. So what do you think, particularly in the United States? I'll be very curious, actually, because in the United States, we're very centered around the United States, but I'm very curious to hear the global aspect of it. What's going on in Europe, what's going on in Asia, India. How is spectrum being managed around the world, actually? What do you see, and what kind of good examples that perhaps we in the United States can learn from, that you maybe observe somewhere else?
I mean, the foundation for this and for the spectrum usage is, of course, this enormous traffic growth that we have. So just last year, we had about 70% growth of traffic between Q4 2012 to Q4 2013. And we are expecting in Ericsson making predictions on this. So we came out here and made predictions that we will have 10 times growth in the next 5 years of packet traffic in these networks. And they're totally packet traffic centered. Voice has become noise, as we say. It's such a small part of the traffic in a network. And that requires more spectrum, of course. Globally today, if you want to really look at the global perspective on spectrum, about 350 megahertz or something like that is allocated by government licensing out. And we expect that would have to grow to perhaps more than 1 gigahertz in the future. At the same time, companies like ourselves are in the business of making most use of spectrum. That's one of the carrying business ideas of our companies, to come out and say, we can make better use of this, please deploy it this way or use these kind of technologies. And I think there the innovation power will just continue to grow. Sometimes I've said that with this kind of growth of traffic, we could see that spectrum will be a very valuable resource. It's a national resource, belongs to the people of a nation, and it will be even more valuable maybe than oil in the future, because it will fuel so many other industries that are building on top of the networks, of the carriers, of the operators. Now, the analogy with oil might also be that we will never run out, is one of the things, because we will always new technology that will be able to take up, because it becomes economically viable to bring up new resources. And it's the same with spectrum, where it becomes more and more economically viable to use different kinds of new technologies to make better use of spectrum.
So you believe that we're going to be able to squeeze more out of the way that we're conceiving of spectrum at this point in time?
Absolutely, and the squeeze might be a bit tough, because that sounds like we're almost running out. We're not. I mean, the new kinds of advancements we make is quadrupling the better use of spectrum that we're doing. And I think the small cells area is obviously one. It's very important to point out that we're working with what we call coordinated, spectrum coordinated small cells. So we don't want to...
What do you, if you don't mind defining what that means for our audience?
Well, that means, and that's very interesting, you could launch a radio transmitter in a spectrum that would use by also the macro layer, the bigger cells. But if you did that in an uncoordinated way, they would interfere with each other. And if you get that interference, then you don't gain so much. You will actually not get the throughput that you really want in that area. So in that sense, you could coordinate every little signal, every resource block, as we call it, inside the transmitting with a resource block on the macro layer. And that happening on milliseconds level. But if you do that, and then they will not interfere because they will shoot at different times. So by that, we were able to make much better use of that spectrum. So, and how do we do that? We do that from the network side. So the network is very good at doing that.
So then let's talk about also 5G. Actually, before we get to 5G, I want us to think about the present time again. Let's talk about small cell and the use of small cells to offload, but also seamlessly integrating it so the consumer experience is really seamless. What do you see happening? What's Ericsson doing in this area?
Well, if you take the regulated spectrum to start with, there all our small cells are integrated with the network, and the user experience gets totally seamless from that. Then, of course, you also have the unregulated spectrum, for instance, in Wi-Fi spectrum and so on. With Wi-Fi technology, you can also create a seamless experience if you're able to tie it harder to the network, if you will, from a technology point of view. That we do, and we have a number of solutions for that, and we're giving operators the opportunity to put up Wi-Fi hotspots and coordinate that with the experience that they get on the regulated spectrum. And then we're also looking, of course, at using LTE technology, for instance, in unlicensed bands, which make the experience even more seamless and focus on a good end user feeling using the services.
So LTE advanced.
Right.
What is Ericsson doing in this area? What do you think?
Well, of course, I mean, we're showing here a carrier aggregation with 3 carriers, 450 megabit in the downlink. Those kind of things is showing the operators that it's continuously so that we can provide, from a network point of view, features and things to increase the peak speeds. Most of this is depending on terminal availability and how viable it gets from a cost point of view in the packaging together of a terminal offering. And I think we're going to see that continue to be better and better, as it's always done. The terminal industry is watching how quickly we can roll out the technology from the network side, and then seeing if it's viable to put out terminals that can make use of that. And I think we see carrier aggregation as one, and we also see other features like uplink comp, which means that 2 different base stations can at the same time receive an uplink from a mobile phone or a device. That is very important because more and more is video material that the consumers are using themselves. I think that's the number one feature that we're supporting with that. So you get a better speed of uploading things. And for instance, for journalists, that's a pretty good idea.
In fact, video is one of the things that is key for us journalists. Right here, we're having this fantastic interview. So you've been having some acquisitions recently of video-related companies. Can you tell us about them, and then what's the vision? Why is this happening with Ericsson?
Well, I mean, for years we've been working with IPTV, and there's always been somewhat limited success of that. But with the development now of a very strong play and opportunity for operators to develop their offerings into a multi-screen play and so forth, IPTV is just skyrocketing in interest. And we just recently then acquired Mediaroom from Microsoft, and adding that into our IPTV solution and putting that together, the very well positioned user interface that they were world leading on. We're building that, and we're getting out to the next generation, which we call TV Anywhere. And this has given us a very, very strong, the strongest position, the number 1 position in the IPTV space, which is very well then timed with all this interest of using a multi-screen solution with both the TVs on the wall, but of course also all the way down to the tablets and the handsets, where you could control your experience, you could log in and get a personal experience on your TV at home by using this TV Anywhere solution. So I think it's very strong, and it's very good timed with many of our traditional customers, our operators' interest to play in that space.
Okay. So this is a little bit of a side, but it just struck me, given what we're having in the United States now with Time Warner and Comcast coming together, and the issues because they are infrastructure plus they are content and content owners. So is content going to be something that Ericsson goes toward, do you think?
Well, I will not speculate, of course, on exactly what opportunities that we see in the future, but I think many of our customers are certainly looking at that. In content management, we're working. So we're, for instance, metadata file creation, which is one of the key technology issues. Compression, we're very active. We're the biggest player also in compression after an acquisition we did some years back with Timber.
Yes.
So I think in terms of all content management and how to handle it and storage and all that, there we're certainly going to be playing a big role there.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
So also with regard to video, looking at, we were talking earlier, the phenomenal things that we saw at CES with a 4K, Ultra HD, as well as the 8K that's going to be coming out. And we're talking about streaming that, and possibly whether it's streaming live or streaming recorded, pre-recorded, whatever it is. The networks need to be able to support it. So first, from a network support perspective, what do you see does that change anything that Ericsson is already planning? I mean, I know you're looking at this, of course, but does that change, how does that impact what Ericsson's plans are?
Everyone is optimizing and working very hard to increase user experiences of anything, and I think these high definitions TV, the 4K, and eventually also the 8K, is giving an absolutely fantastic experience. I mean, it's obvious, and when you've seen it, you feel that, wow, this is really what people want. And of course, we're preparing the networks for that. It requires a lot of thinking, since spectrum is limited, network capacity is limited. It's been an area of tradition for us to work very hard in the codecs, as I said before, and those things, HEVC codecs, for instance, is an open source codec project where Ericsson was in the lead and so on. So I think we're going to continue to work with the codecs, the opportunity to develop that further in the frame of 5G, even though we're not supposed to, we can have ideas about 5G now, but it's really an open area of innovation. But I would not be surprised if 4K or even higher definitions are part of the 5G idea, or 5G play and 5G ideas.
Yeah.
And it's going to be there, and for sure.
How about the business models? What are the business models that are going to allow for the coverage of the kind of costs that are probably going to be incurred possibly out of 4K? And I think that's part of there's one thing about the capacity and the ability to push that kind of data. There's nothing making it a viable business for you. So is that affecting your business models and how business models are being developed?
I mean, in terms of cost, if you look at the business models, you could say that Moore's law is still in place. I mean, there's nothing is happening with that. So, continuously we're increasing the capacity of technology, which is to handle and manage more and more. In terms of revenues, I think we're seeing all kinds of experimentation regarding business models at the moment. What we're very happy to see is that there is a lot of discussion about that when it comes to the carriers' opportunities to work with outside players because the networks are opening up. And one of the key technology focuses for us and for me to drive in Ericsson is to open up all kinds of APIs and opportunities for others to play on top of the networks and make use of them and make the networks relevant to other industries. The worst scenario would be if the networks were becoming non-relevant to media industry and to all kinds of new future TV opportunities, etc. That would mean that they would not happen. I mean, the reason why Netflix happened is because the networks can distribute it.
Right.
So we'll be looking at all kinds, and there will always be debates, I'm sure, about who's earning the most. But at the end of the day, the best way to make networks relevant is to supply a superior performance, a superior quality to the different industries wanting to make use of it.
Right. And actually, so, another debate that's happened, and especially again because of Comcast and now the deal that Netflix had, did they have to have that deal with Comcast in order to make sure they would get that traffic and be able to be pushed? We have net neutrality is a big issue.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, let's leave the United States for a second, let's go to Europe and the rest of the world. How is net neutrality playing out over there? What are you seeing?
Well, for us, it's very important to always advocate that the investments in the networks is what will make new services, new possibilities happen in the network society. If you at any point try to commoditize that and say, you know, it doesn't matter, best effort, we'll see what happens. You know, everyone gets little access. They get 1 bit, but you know, everyone gets it.
Right.
But that kind of phenomena has never really benefited the developments of networks, and it is a continuous hammering on getting networks better and better and make use of all these technology. Why? Because of the traffic growth, because of the enormous explosion that we have of usage, of users who actually benefit from it and like it. So in that sense, that's our input to the network neutrality debate as well. And I think my feeling is that it's gone from a very hot topic to a not really so important topic. I think both regulators and operators, of course, and also the internet industry and so on, are understanding that the equilibrium of strong networks with higher performance and better service connectivity is benefiting the development of new services as well.
I think you might need to be talking to Tom Wheeler and some of the carriers in the United
Yeah, we
States.
do. I mean, we have. I mean, I would say that we have great discussions with regulators about this, and the FCC has traditionally understood very well how this should develop. Yeah.
And how about 5G? How about 5G and what's going on with them from a future perspective?
Well, 5G is now in an innovation mode. Yesterday we had a press conference, and since we're in Europe here, we had a press conference with 5G PPP, public-private partnership, which is going to talk about research projects in the European frame. The European Union is adding 3 billion euros to a platform of innovation, and the industry is adding that. So I think that's going to be a great thing. I think we will see many of those platforms of innovation globally, in China, in the US, and so on. And that's the mood we're in now, and it's very important to remember that this industry is dependent on global scale, and it's dependent on standardization. And we would never be where we are if we didn't standardize the air interface, for instance. That would be totally impossible. So the success of the industry is celebrating this collaborative innovation mode that this is about. And we've said now all the major vendors were there, and we all agreed that, you know, this is an open innovation platform for a few years now. Everyone will go off and do research project commonly, looking at different opportunities. Some of the inputs are from what we talked about, media, what will be required from that. We're looking at something beyond 10 gigabit downlink, maybe 10 to 20 gigabit downlinks with latencies of milliseconds, with very low energy consumptions for perhaps tenfold lower, and so forth. So those are some of the inputs that everyone is agreeing should be discussed in the 5G scenario.
Any kind of interesting things in your labs that you can talk about?
Well, of course, I mean, many things, and we've been working at similar problems that will now be put into the 5G plans, and of course one of them is to make use of higher frequency, to go up beyond 10 gigahertz, and also make more efficient end-to-end connections through the IP part of the network, the core, which we are now, that's the one that we're making into the cloud and so on. So a lot of those kind of technologies, but I can't reveal any of the top secrets here. One vision that we made yesterday and that we've come forward is that we call 5G now the network of the networked society. So, you know, that's framing it into the vision we have, which means that machine-to-machine communication will be a very big part.
Fantastic. And when do you think 5G is going to start actually coming into the network and into the consumer hands?
I think beyond 2020. I think that's really, so we don't push it too early, because then it will not really solve any of the major problems that we need to solve for the long-term future, which are very important to solve. If we just push it earlier, I think we will run into an overlap with 4G, which is, from an investment point of view, not ideal.
Right, exactly. Ulf, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
All the information you shared with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us here at RCR Wireless. Please stay tuned for more from the show floor.